Hey, I'm Jake. I make RPG supplements and videos about Pathfinder 2, or PF2. I love PF2, and as a longtime player of D&D and a lot of other games, I want to share with you what I find along the way in my Pathfinder journey, and hopefully in a way that makes it easy to understand and maybe fun. So today we're going to be covering the Highhelm book, the Book of the Dwarves. Just the archetype for now. I'll be back for the rest later. I'm sorry for my sound quality. So no microphone is working. So we get this little webcam microphone. Isn't it great? It's so cute. Working on it. Okay, so the archetype we're going to be covering is the Stalwart Defender. I started reading it, and then I'm like, whoa, no, wait. I should totally read the rest of this while I'm on camera so that you guys get my first impression. So, Stalwart Defender. It's meant for dwarves, yes, but you can have access to this if you trained with the dwarves in Highhelm, or if you're already a dwarf, or you just don't care about the uncommon restriction because you're not playing society play and it doesn't matter to you. This is the Dwarven Defender prestige class from 3rd edition, but it sounds cooler. Okay, so the additional feats that you get, aside from the feats I'm going to list from the archetype, are Steel Skin, Armored Rebuff, and Mighty Bulwark. If that sounds like the Sentinel, you're right. I love that there's a secondary Sentinel option. Alright. I guess I'm really excited about the first feat, because I already read it. This is cool. So, Stalwart Defender Dedication. Level 2 feat. Prerequisites. Trained in light armor. You gain the Tenacious Stance action. It's a one-action stance. You have to be wearing armor. You steady yourself as tough and immutable as stone. You gain a number of temporary hit points equal to half your level, minimum 1, and a +2 circumstance bonus to DCs against being shoved and tripped. So you just plant your ass in place, and you have extra hit points. It's really hard to move you out of the way. You no longer negate your armor check penalty or speed penalty for having a high strength while in the stance. So it's really hard for you to move out of the stance unless you just break the stance. Which, by the way, there's no specific action to break the stance. The developers have said, well, developers, like it's a video game. The creative writing team has said that they didn't really plan for there to be a stance. You just are in the stance until you don't want to be in the stance anymore, or you take another action, like another stance, or you invalidate the prerequisites of taking the stance in the first place. But you can just drop a stance. After you leave the tenacious stance, you lose any temporary hit points that were left over, and you become immune to using the ability for a minute. So it's once per battle, it's a few extra hit points, but it makes you really sturdy and stay in place. It's cool, especially if you're just like blocking the way for your allies that are squishy behind you, like in a hallway. I want to say that this starting out is better than the Sentinel dedication. Yeah, I know. Okay, so it works a little bit differently. But you get temporary hit points. The Sentinel doesn't do that. And I know it doesn't grant heavy and medium armor proficiencies, but the next feat does. Mountain Skin, level 4 feat. These two together, if nothing else, make this more appealing to me for casters who want armor than the Sentinel. So, Mountain Skin, level 4 feat. You're trained in medium and heavy armor. Whenever you gain a class feature that grants you expert or greater proficiency in any armor but not unarmored defense, you also gain that proficiency rank in the armor types granted to you by this feat. Same thing as the Sentinel. So, it took you another 2 levels to get there, but you also have the stance in the beginning. Okay, level 4 feat. Tunnel Wall, 1 action. Prerequisites, shield block, Stalwart Defender dedication. Requirements, you are in tenacious stance. Using your shield, you guard against the movement of foes as surely as if you were a wall of stone. You raise a shield and become anchored for 1 round. While anchored, you gain a +4 circumstance bonus to the DC to tumble through your space. That's cool! That keeps rogues from backstabbing you and swashbucklers from buckling your swashes. That's not going to be used by a caster. Yeah, okay. So, that's pretty much only good for your front row tank. But it's really nice. I haven't seen anything else that gives you a +4 bonus to stop someone from moving past you. That's cool. Level 6 feat, Crushing Step. The weight of your armored feet casts aside natural impediments. When wearing medium or heavy armor, you ignore difficult terrain from non-magical sources. If you are a master in the armor you are wearing, you also ignore greater difficult terrain from non-magical sources. That's all terrain. I know, not magical. That makes no sense to me in a swamp. The weight of your armored feet casts aside the water and mud. Wouldn't you just sink through it more? Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a game. It doesn't have to make sense. Not everything has to make sense. So this is really useful for not impeding your movement in tactical situations. This is really better if you're not a dwarf, because this works with mobility, which dwarves are limited in. Yeah, I know. They also have extra movement compared to other people if you're wearing heavier armor. Well, not extra, the same. I don't know. I just like this for non-dwarves so far. Gravel Guts. Level 6 feet. Prerequisites. You take the archetype. Stone never becomes queasy, so why should you? You gain a +1 circumstance bonus to saving throws against the sickened condition. When you succeed at a fortitude save to reduce your sickened value, you reduce it by 2 or by 3 on a critical success. That's cool. It's not going to come up often, but sickened sucks. And being able to reduce the value by 3 on a critical success, or 2. In most cases, if you make a save once with this, you're just not going to be sickened anymore. And the +1 bonus to saves, people have argued like +1 doesn't matter or does matter. If you're fighting things on level, it's basically like the same difference of fighting them at first level on level. So the +1 matters. So anyway, this is a really good feat for, well, if you're in melee and you're a fighter type and you get sickened by a spell, you're just screwed until you vomit and try to make your save. So yeah, it'd be nice to just avoid it in the first place, or to spend fewer actions vomiting. Upset Balance, our first reaction. Ooh. Level 6 feet. Prerequisites to the Stalwart Defender dedication. Expert in athletics. Trigger, you are damaged by a melee strike. Requirements, you have to be in tenacious stance first. Okay, so there are other things based on the stance. You lean into your foe's attack, using the weight of your body and armor to send them reeling. Attempt an athletics check against the creature's reflex DC. On a success, the target becomes clumsy 1 until the end of its next turn, clumsy 2 on a critical success. If you are anchored, you get a +2 circumstance bonus to this check. Okay, that's cool. So, if someone in melee hits you, you basically shove them. You sort of like clumsily fall into them if you want, because it's just because you're wearing lots of armor. You push into them and just like make them unbalanced, so their AC goes down, so they're easier to hit. Yes, it has other impacts as well, but it mostly makes it easier for you to hit people in your next action. And if you're doing the tenacious stance and you're anchored, you get a bonus to it. So this just makes you a better fighter in melee. Okay, I like this archetype. Level 8 feet, Rupture Stomp. 2 action activity, prerequisites, you take this archetype. Frequency once per day, requirements, you're in tenacious stance. Every dwarf knows that the rock they walk upon can be either a best friend or a treacherous path. With a heavy impact of your armored heel, you crack the ground underneath you. The ground with a 10-foot emanation becomes difficult terrain. That's awesome, you just break apart the earth. If you are a master or better, I love that idea in like a castle or an underground dungeon. You just like stomp on the flagstones and crack 10 feet of them. If you're a master or better in the army you're wearing, this becomes greater difficult terrain. So this is always useful. The cracked ground settles and reverts to normal terrain after a minute. That's cool, because with your earlier ability you can ignore all difficult terrain, non-magical, and this isn't magical. That's cool. Area control built into a fighter type. This is cool. Okay. Oh, a special at 16th level, you can take the feat again. If you do, you can use it once per hour instead of once per day. That should just be an automatic upgrade. Like, I've seen this kind of thing before, and yeah, it's cool that it can get cooler, but why do you have to spend another feat on it? You already spent a feat taking it so you could do the thing and be cool. I don't know, that's just me. Rupture Stomp. That's neat. Unshaken in Iron. Level 8 feat. Prerequisite, you take the archetype. You know the precise limits of your armor and trust it to save you from harm. You gain the armor specialization effect of light armor. If you are trained in medium or heavy armor, you gain the respective armor specialization effect for those armors as well. Okay, that makes sense. So that's also like the Sentinel. While in Tenacious Stance, you increase the value of your armor specialization effects by an amount equal to the value of your armor check penalty. Adding +3 to the resistance while wearing plate armors, for example. That's cool. Wow. This is like the Dwarven Defender from 3.5, or 3rd edition. You're just hardier. You're just more resistant to whatever your specialization resists. It's different types of damage, depends. This just increases your survivability. And also, it's kind of badass. Like, I just know how to use my armor better. Or you, like, secretly welded cast iron to the inside or something. By an amount equal to your armor check penalty. That's cool. Oh man, that's a good use of game mechanics. I think you have to reuse armor check penalties somehow in a positive way. Level 10 feat. This is fun. This is long. Gathering Moss. It's a free action. It is magical necromancy. Frequency once per day. Trigger, you enter Tenacious Stance. Okay, so this happens while you're entering the stance. By rooting yourself in place, you are able to focus your body's natural healing to work faster. You gain fast healing equal to your level, which is at least 10. This fast healing remains for 1 minute or until you end your Tenacious Stance. Whichever comes first. This is amazing. That's great. Okay, so you gain temporary hit points. You're harder to move. And then you gain fast healing. All at once. Crap. This is like the go-to archetype for, like, sorry, but maybe I'm just excited about it, but this replaces the Sentinel for me in many cases. Like, even if, yeah, okay, you can only use it once per day, but it's a minute of at least 10 fast healing. What kind of caster, what kind of healer, what kind of anyone doesn't want that? Yeah, okay, cool. I'm sold. I like this book. Paizo's a cool company. Oh, and also, they sent me this book so that I can do this review. This doesn't actually come out until the 28th on PDF. It's already out in book form, but I don't have that. I have a PDF. Level 12 feat. No. Oh yeah, okay. That was the only level 10 feat. Gathering Moss. That's cool. Gathering Moss. You just don't move. This is totally thematic if you're an Oread. An Oread dwarf. Or whatever. Oread elf. I don't care. I like the feel of this archetype. Okay, level 12 feat. Cracked Mountain. Reaction. Frequency once per hour. Trigger, you would be reduced to 0 hit points but not immediately killed. Requirements, you are in Tenacious Stance. Okay, so again, and the next one also requires Tenacious Stance. You fight on, staying on your feet and lashing out at a foe. You avoid being knocked out and remain at 1 hit point, and your wounded condition increases by 1. Make a melee strike at an enemy within reach, you immediately end your Tenacious Stance. That's cool. So there are other like ancestral feats or archetype feats that allow you to do this thing. You avoid being knocked out, and remain at 1 hit point, your wounded condition increases by 1. They're not common, but they exist. But you also get to make a melee strike at an enemy. That is really neat. So it's basically just I get to survive longer. Like the Gladiator has this, but the Gladiator does it better, but the Gladiator sucks. So this is just a better archetype if you want to take fighter abilities. And then just as a final fuck you, you make a melee strike. But because it's a reaction, it does not count your multiple attack penalty. Because you're just reacting. Maybe overreacting. but you smack them in the face while you're standing sturdy instead of dropping. Level 16 feat. This is the last one. Stone Body. It's a single action activity once per hour while you're in Tenacious Stance. Emulating the great defenders throughout Dwarven history, you close your mind to the sensation of pain, becoming as resolute as stone itself. You gain resistance 10 to all damage. This effect lasts until the end of your next turn or immediately upon being critically hit. Okay. So it's an action, you have to plan for taking the extra damage, but this archetype is built for you to be in the way of your enemies getting to your allies. So if you plant yourself in a doorway, and you are in Tenacious Stance, so you gain the extra temporary hit points. You can even start your fast healing if you want to. And then you gain resistance 10 to all damage. You could, like, stop a boulder. Or, I don't know, charging ogres. Freaking cool. This is a good archetype. I don't see any problems with this. Like, I thought maybe they would possibly have to make erratas on this, but everything seems balanced, but so cool. And you still get access to some of the feats that the Sentinel gets access to, like Steel Skin, Armored Rebuff, and Mighty Bulwark. I can't see a reason to choose the Sentinel instead. Let's look. Steel Skin, you can rest normally while wearing armor. Nobody cared. Nobody still cares. Armor specialization at level 6. And the Stalwart Defender gets armor specialization at, I think, 8. Yeah, at level 8, so it's 2 levels later. It's 1 archetype feat later. But they get it better. Because they get a special benefit for... Man, that is worth waiting for the extra 2 levels. For the extra resistance while wearing heavier armors. That's neat. Okay, let's compare more. Sentinel's 8th level feat Armored Rebuff reaction only works if an adjacent foe critically fails an attack roll to strike you with a melee weapon or unarmed attack. By contrast, the Stalwart Defender's ability at level 6, so it's earlier, only works if you're damaged by it. So you get to make them off balance for your next attack if they hit you, if you're talking about the Stalwart Defender. And the Sentinel, you shove them aside so they have to take an extra action to come up to step up to you. They both have different appeals. You could take both of them. You can't... Well, actually, no. You could... Well, that's cool. Because if somebody critically fails or hits you, then you can do a reaction that messes with them. Yeah, okay. So I'm glad that they don't invalidate each other. They do things that are slightly different. I like that a lot, in Pathfinder 2 at least. Archetypes and classes have their own flavor and feel. Even if they have very similar, even the same abilities, they work just slightly differently, or their flavor is very different. So the Sentinel is still useful. Okay, maybe I just like the bright shiny thing. But you have, like, fast healing and resistance versus all damage. And frankly, the Sentinel just... It doesn't have as many feats. It just doesn't have as many options. It has 5 feats. This is a more full class. The Stalwart Defender is more of a whole ass in Sentinel archetype. Yeah. Okay. Still, I can't see a reason that I would be a caster and take Sentinel instead of this. As long as I was going to play at 4th level or later. If it's 2nd level, yeah, Sentinel because armor proficiencies. But if you're doing 4th level at least, Stalwart Defender gets the armor proficiencies, and you get other stuff. That's another thing. With Stalwart Defender, you have to have the shield block feat before you take tunnel wall. So that's to keep people from moving through your space. You have to have shield block first, but it doesn't require shield block for any other of the feats. So that's cool. So if you are a caster or somebody who's just doesn't have access to those armors, so not like a melee fighter type, then that's the only thing you're really missing out on, unless you take the shield block feat, because you can. This is cool. Sentinel isn't useless, but this is just flat out better because there's more of it, and you have more choices as you go through it. Yeah, the Sentinel only has the additional feats of Sacrifice Armor and Greater Interpose. Yeah. Sorry. Stalwart Defender just has more stuff to it, more options, and more temporary hit points, fast healing, damage resistance, and protecting your allies with your body, which is what a tank is supposed to do. I know there's no tanks in Pathfinder 2 or other tabletop role-playing games, and most people are happy about that. But people still know the concept of tank. This is a tank, clearly. It's somebody who's meant to not get crit, live as long as possible, help keep their allies alive, and maybe use some situational abilities like creating difficult terrain by stomping on the ground and making 10 feet of cracked earth around you. So it's difficult for your allies, it's more difficult for your enemies to get past you. Good archetype. Thank you for joining me. I just wanted to go over the archetype. I'm glad we did. Thank you to our lovely patron people. We could not do this without you. I release unique videos on Patreon, do giveaways, and the top level patrons get something made by me every month and get private chats, and I'm basically their bitch, so that's fine. If you want to see what all you get, you can click on the link in the description for Patreon just to see what there is. Also, if you want to check out the builds on the website, the walkthroughs of how to do the builds on the blog, it's wisdomcheckcreations.com. It's down there. And if you like the video, do me a favor and give it a thumbs up and comment or share. Boost the signal for the algorithm gods to say, hey, that guy doesn't suck after all. Let's throw him a bone, a few more people. I'd appreciate it. I'll be covering more of Highhelm, so if you want to hear more of it, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to at least be covering the backgrounds and skill feats and ancestry feats. Might also go into items and new animal companions. That's cool. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Uni says, subscribe or I don't get fed and die. It's your fault. Bye-bye.